This piece is called Where I Met My George. This is for you, Grandma. You know where I met my George? Mitzi Milstein's wedding, of all places. Mitzi Milstein. Oh my God, she was stunning. A dish with red hair like silk. It was the first Jew I ever met with red hair. The boys used to call her Schwitzy Mitzi because she was so beautiful that when they walked by, they would get all nervous and start schwitzing in their jackets. Her only observable flaw was that she laughed exactly like a duck. I mean, not only did she laugh exactly like a duck, but she looked exactly like a duck when she laughed. When she laughed, she would sort of stick her face forward and stick her mouth out, and it would turn into this duck-like, beak-looking thing. But when you look like Mitzi Milstein, no one gives a fuck if you laugh like a duck. And Mitzi knew that better than anyone. So, Mitzi got married to Marvin Friedman. Marvin Friedman was the heir to the Friedman Pharmacy, and it was a wedding like you wouldn't believe. Flowers and fancy steak platters and an 8-piece orchestra. It was the first time I'd ever been to a party thrown by someone with money. And it was at this big mansion. I swear to you, when I saw the place, I almost flossed. Yes, I did. Well, anyway, I didn't know very many people there. Mitzi and Vivian were about all. So Mitzi sat me at the table with Vivian, who was a bridesmaid, and in those days you would sit the bridesmaids with the single best men. Well, wouldn't you know it, George was the best man, and wouldn't you know it, George was single. So there we were, a perfect summer evening, an 8-piece orchestra, an open bar, and oh, did he make me laugh. You know, I laughed so hard that I spit my water right into his eyes. But he was wearing glasses. So it just sort of hit him in the lenses and slowly dripped down. I was so embarrassed. But he didn't even flinch. He just looked at me and he said, "Thank you. I don't suppose you drive windshields for free too, do you?" I told him he supposed incorrectly, and I reached over with my shawl and I dried his eyeglasses off, just like that. They were still on his face, so I had both lenses covered with the shawl. And when I took the shawl off, there he was, just a few inches away from my face, looking right at me. This look that I will never forget as long as I live. He looked at me like I was the cat's pajamas, like I had just done the most wonderful thing in the world, and I had been so embarrassed about it. Well, he looked at me and I felt like I had just done the most wonderful thing in the world. And I thought I was a little shy around strangers, especially strangers like George. But I took his hand, looked him in the eye and said, "That'll cost you one dance, please." Well, the orchestra was very smart, and as one song ended, they would start another one, and you wouldn't even notice. It was like one sweet, long song. You know, in fact, the whole night was just like one sweet, long song. And that's how I met my George. Well, if George told you the story story, he'd exaggerate like you wouldn't believe, and we'd be here till next Tuesday. He'd say, I spotted that woman the second she walked in. That's not true. He did not spot me the second I walked in, but that is what he would tell you. He would say something like, I looked at my friend Frank in the eye and I said, Frank, my dear friend, when George tells a story, everyone is George's dear friend. Frank, my dear friend, I'm gonna marry that woman. That's what he'd say. It's a load of horse shit, like most of his stories, but that's what he would say. But you know what? He would tell it to you with such a twinkle in his eye. One that you only saw when he told his stories. That you would forgive him in 1 second for telling you absolute horse shit. I would take twinkly-eyed horse shit any day. Anyway, we were married in 1952. For the first time in my life, I had money. Not a ton, not even a lot, but to me, I might as well have married the Prince of the goddamn England. It wasn't the money that was the game. The game was my George. And now he's gone. How can he be gone? How can he be dead? He was so alive. Our love was so alive. What do I have without him? Living to me has come to mean sharing with George. That is what I like about living, sharing. You know, they use that expression, growing old together. I don't really like it. I think it's kind of hokey. As though there were an alternative. Something else you could do with somebody besides grow old with them. You know, that's where you're going, right? To old age. There's really nothing you can do about it. But I think maybe if you put the emphasis on growing instead of on old, then the term really starts to take on some meaning. We are growing together, growing into each other. We're forming to one another. You can imagine having the one that you've grown in relation to, having them gone. And there you are, caught like some dumb schmuck, not knowing how to grow anymore.